Some of the measures being considered to allow workplaces to open again have been seen by BBC News, and they include strict rules to protect the health of staff while at work. There's no date set for relaxing the lockdown, but the pressure is growing given that more than 6 million British workers have now been furloughed, with the government paying their wages. The Prime Minister is expected to give more guidance this coming Sunday on relaxing the lockdown in some form. Now, the measures include staggering the start times for employees to avoid crowding in and around the workplace. Staff will be helped to maintain the 2-metre social distancing rule where possible, but it's not clear how they'll be protected if it's not possible. And there'll be regular cleaning and disinfecting for workspaces and surfaces. The guidance comes as the government announced today the deaths of another 288 people who tested positive for coronavirus, and that brings the total number of these deaths in the UK so far to 28,734. Well, we'll start tonight with this report by our business editor, Simon Jack.
Making the workplace work. At the Bentley factory in Crewe, workers are returning after a 7-week layoff, and with 250 of their own new safety measures, the boss is convinced they can do it safely. Protective masks will be compulsory.
It's a micro-management operation, but it's life and death if we don't get it right. So we are passionate about this, and we can see a way through it for our type of operation, even with the 2 metres, by halving the production. But certainly if it can come down to 1 metre, that would be almost business as usual for us.
So factories have their own specific challenges, but so do other work environments like offices. Maximum number of people in the lift, one-way traffic signals throughout the workplace. In total, there are 7 sets of guidelines for 7 different types of working environment, but there are some common denominators. Chief among them, if you don't need your employees at work, let them work from home. Other common themes include hand washing at entry and exit points, limit or stop the sharing of desks and equipment, and minimise face-to-face meetings. These are UK-wide proposals, but Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland may take a different approach.
So this is our office, and there's 28 members of staff that need to sit in here.
Government guidelines recommend social distancing where possible, tricky in office environments like this Sheffield finance company.
If we're advised that we're able to return, but we have to adhere to social distancing rules, that for us is going to be quite challenging. We also work in a shared office environment, so although we've got our own office, we share kitchens and bathrooms with a number of other businesses in the building, so obviously that's going to throw up more challenges as well.
As we saw with health, the issue of protective equipment could prove a major problem if millions of returning employees need it at work or while travelling to and from work. Where will employers get it? Will they compete with the NHS for vital supplies? Today's guidelines said nothing other than more details to follow.
There's a big blank section on PPE, which is absolutely critical to many workers, as we've seen all too vividly in care homes. And issues like social distancing or even the provision of hand washing facilities are left as a matter of discretion for employers.
Understandably, the Health Secretary today said the Health Service would take priority when it comes to PPE.
This is a really important question when we consider changes to the social distancing measures, the wider impact of changes to social distancing measures, including, for instance, on PPE. And the first call on PPE must go to the NHS and social care and those other essential services.
The government, employers and many workers want to restart, but health warnings have made us cautious, and going back is not that simple, according to Claire Conrad, who works in publishing.
I'm desperate to get back to work, as is my husband, but I don't see any of these plans happening. I've got childcare issues. If my husband goes back to work before me, I'd have to stay at home and look after our child full time, our 6-year-old. I'm certainly not getting on public transport anytime soon.
Today's guidelines make grim reading for the hospitality industry. Bars and sit-down eating must remain closed. Sometime soon, we may be going back to work, but not to play. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Well, one of the prime challenges facing workers when their firms or businesses eventually start up again is how to travel safely to and from work. Our transport correspondent Tom Burridge has been looking at the difficulties likely to be faced by commuters as the lockdown is lifted in different phases.
Manchester today and before the lockdown. Social distancing easy now, hard when crowds return. A challenge across public transport. Back in November, we joined Mark on his crowded commute. Like most, he's now working from home.
I wouldn't be in any rush to go back on the trains, so I just would be very twitchy about it. I think I haven't been wearing a mask or gloves, so I've seen a lot of people out and about when they go shopping that do that. I think if I was using public transport, I would have to have that sort of equipment myself.
At Manchester Piccadilly, markings on the floor show how few people can be here if the 2-metre rule is respected. When restrictions lift, the number of trains and passengers will increase.
We will be putting adjustments in place to make sure that everybody can travel safely. We're working really closely with health and safety representatives from the trades unions, and we're working really closely with government just to understand what that is going to look like.
Parking trains up was the easy bit. Bringing services back takes a lot of planning. Transport bosses need to know what level of social distancing ministers want and balance that against the numbers of people who may be commuting. Getting the unions on side will be key. Today they said they had deep concerns for passengers and staff over plans to increase the number of trains. A significant number of transport workers have died of coronavirus, 41 in London alone. Most of them worked on buses.
If in the future people are still expected to be at least 2 metres apart, then it means this double-decker bus could only carry 15 people. On a single-decker, it would be just 5.
I'm told it's likely that face coverings will be compulsory for everyone across public transport. And what will happen to our roads, which have for weeks been uncharacteristically quiet?
It is highly likely that many people will abandon public transport initially, but that will be equalised somewhat because 22% of drivers actually say they will drive less. And there will be about 36% more people cycling, walking, jogging to work.
Getting around on 2 wheels has become more popular during the pandemic, and cities like Glasgow plan to spend more money on improving cycle lanes. But the big transport conundrum is how to manage our usually overcrowded railways when more of us can travel more freely again. Tom Burridge, BBC News.